really great future. We're talking real money.
There's a big question that plagues every single retiree or future retiree when they're doing their planning calculations, and that is, all right, I've saved all this money. How much can I take out every year to live on? Well, there are lots of, here we go again, rules of thumb, which are just sort of loose guides. But every single year, and it's time for it again, Morningstar's research easy for me to say. Morningstar's research staff calculates why did I do this? I should have taken a nap. Calculates the safe withdrawal rate for retirees as you begin to spend down your retirement savings, and they base their calculations. So we establish our baseline here before the discussion. Their baseline is a 40-60 portfolio. Tell them what that means, Tom.
Yeah, it's interesting because traditionally the kind of general balanced fund would be the opposite, would be 60-40, 60% in stocks and 40% in bonds. Here we are suggesting a 40% stock, 60% bond portfolio for a period of 30 years,
which
is a lengthy retirement. Yes.
But it makes sense because what they're doing is they're leaning more conservative with the expectation that as you are retired, you're going to want to be less aggressive than 60-40 in many cases. So they're leaning very conservatively. So if you have a 50-50 or a 60-40, these numbers might be very different. So I want to establish that right off the bat.
Yeah, and this is a fascinating, and I think anybody can go look at this at Morningstar, right? It's titled Fixed versus Flexible Morningstar Tests 9 Retirement Spending Methods. I think Paul Merriman has 37 of these on his website. No, kidding. Sorry, Paul. But he has a lot of charts.
I think you're being conservative.
He has a lot of charts. And Mark Hebner probably has, in the double digits.
14,000.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of looks at all this. But Morningstar, it's pretty interesting that they've looked at the Vanguard dynamic spending, the probability-based guardrails, the constant percentage, et cetera. It's all these different methods. And by the way, there was somebody, one of them is the RMDs, Required Minimum Distribution Strategy, that somebody asked us about. That I think we're going to get to a question later on. But this is a fascinating look at how much you can pull out. Now, Morningstar, their base case, they've adjusted it from 4%, which is the kind of the 4% rule you hear about, right? Which is not really a rule either, by the way, but it's somehow turned into a rule. That if you take out 4% and you were in a portfolio 60% in stocks, 40% in bonds, that over all these periods of time in the past, your portfolio would have survived the good, the bad, the ugly, et cetera.
Adjusting it for inflation. That's an inflation-adjusted number. That 4% rule is based on an inflation adjustment every year.
Yeah, and this year, after rerunning all the numbers again, they have adjusted it down to 3.9%. So you have to live on a little bit less. I know. We're teasing Christine Benz at Retirement about that number. Like, if we're really nice, can we go back to 4, please? Wouldn't that be nice if we get to 4? But so a lot of this is depending on your situation, right? That's what I don't like about these rules is they're not really plans. They're really, kind of strategies without thinking about the other aspects.
But most people want some semi-black and white guidance. Do this, don't do that. That's why you get so many articles like that. You get us talking about it because human beings want guidance. We want some reasonable certainty, which, by the way, you don't get in the world at all. We do not know anything about the future. We're never going to get that, but we're going to keep trying to get it, even though we know we can't. What we have defaulted to over many, many years, because we think it's workable and it makes it very, very difficult to run out of money, is what they call the constant percentage. We call it flexible withdrawal.
In other words, you're saying my portfolio is made this much. I'm going to take, or pardon me,
No, it's
is
worth
this big?
this much.
Is this worth this much? I'm going to take 5% out of that. And then, wow, I had a great year in 2025. As I mentioned, you took the whole gang to Hawaii, for example, because, wow, you really made the money. And then the next year was a down year. And
He's
so
going to use it. I bet he's going to use it. Let's see.
I know. You know where I'm headed with this.
I know where you're going.
Because it worked really well at retirement. Big laugh because I said instead of Hawaii, you get to go to the Great Wolf Lodge.
It was not a big laugh. It
that
was
a pretty
titter.
big laugh.
It was a titter.
Okay, but there's 400 people, so it sounds like a big laugh to me.
It was a polite titter.
a little one of those fake claps. Nancy Pelosi claps. So anyway.
But they've adjusted our 5% up.
Yes, they have. But again, still, much of this comes down to also, for me, what are you trying to achieve here? Are you just trying to make sure the money lasts, or do you want to leave more to others? Because that will supply a difference in the strategy, right? With the 4% plus inflation, you end up leaving more, but you spent less. With the 5% flexible, you spent more, but you left less to others. Again, what's important to you? What's in your value system? I'm frankly of the mind to spend more. And I also worry a bit after I'm gone what sort of guardrails will be in place. I love my wife, but she's a bigger spender than I am. I've been more on the make money, not the spend money side so far in the relationship. But so these are value judgments that we can't place for you, but they're things for you to consider. Here's another thing to consider. When you build your plan, and you should have a plan after age 50 that looks at all these factors, you should have it run many times by a professional. You're not smart enough to do this. You need to have somebody who does it every day, hit go, and see how long it works.
Our audience? Are you
I'm
saying
sorry.
They're dumb?
I have somebody who does it for me because I don't trust myself around this. They push the button and make sure it works for me and for my wife, etc. But these are fascinating looks. Let's go through a few of them. You mentioned the actual spending. Yeah. So what they're showing here is the year-end, the median 30-year ending balance is fairly substantial, and you got to spend quite a bit of money, right, in that period of time. That's not bad.
That's the thing that this article shows very clearly. They have what is called a spending ending ratio.
Yep.
And with the 4% rule of thumb, your spending ending ratio is 45 to 55, which means you're going to spend at 45 and end up with 55. You're going to end up with more money at the end. Whereas the constant percentage ratio kicks you almost up to 60% spending and only 42 ending. So if you want to enjoy life more, that's where that flexible amount becomes more sensible. You're leaving less to your kids. It really depends on what your goal is.
That's what I'm saying. And so these are value judgments we all have to make. There's parts of my savings I'd love to leave to the next generation. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Who knows? I know you've been very specific about saying that. And by the way, that's why none of the people in your family are listening to this podcast. But that's a whole other topic that we don't want to get into today. Exactly.
But these nicer and listen more often, they might improve their chances.
They might get more of that Roth money that's coming in tax-free. But these are really good because it's helpful to look at the field, I think, because this is something that is examined by basically everybody in the business, because this is something you've got to be able to talk about to your clients and to your prospects. But I don't think anybody can put their finger exactly on the right one. There is no right one, right? That's the struggle.
That's because it comes right back to the same thing I say over and over and over again on this show. It depends.
Yeah. And that's not what you're wearing under your pants there either. So, no, it's
not funny. Given my advancing years, not funny.
I'm sorry. Well, I did send you a whole case of them. But fun. it also
really not funny if you did that.
Here's the thing. This is another part that we mentioned, but I don't know that we mentioned it enough. The people that are more successful with this in retirement, I've seen it over and over again, have a certain amount of flexibility. They have flexibility in their lives. They have flexibility in their spending, and they can say, I'm going to turn it up a little bit. I'm going to turn it down a little bit. Those are the people who end up not worrying about it as much, and I think also end up with more if that's what they want to end up with.
Yeah, and The fact of the matter is you have to make that decision before you get to retirement, and that's where the whole planning process comes in. That's why we harp on this thing, because whether you do it with somebody or you just do it on your own, you really need to at least go into retirement with some idea of what your spending needs are and your ability to take risk to meet those needs.
Yeah, and
that's
by the
really
way,
that's the gist of the whole matter. That's about all there is to it.
And people don't want to face up to that last part. It's also fascinating to see the required minimum distribution that is also 93% spent and 7%, because the percent you have to take out of the portfolio goes up. You don't have to spend that either, by the way, but in this case, they're assuming you do, and you end up leaving very little for others, but you had a good life.
It's self-liquidating.
Exactly.
The RMD is self-liquidating. In fact, if you live too long, you really get down to little or nothing using the RMD route. So you've got to be careful, too, about that. I have never heard anyone suggest that you attack your entire portfolio with an RMD. The RMD really only applies to IRAs.
Yeah, it is for qualified money, right? Only for pre-tax like IRAs, 401ks, that kind of thing. You're not required to spend down Roths. Of course, you're not required to spend down your taxable account either. And this is another reason that we recommend having several buckets, if you will, types of investments with various tax implications, because people end up needing to deal with the tax situation and the required minimum distributions. This is a great story. This is one of the best I've ever seen. The minute you showed it to me, I was like, wow, this is really, it explains things well. I think it shows you real life possibilities. Of course, nobody really knows what the future holds, so you got to have your own strategy around all of this. By
the way, just a plug to Morningstar, this piece is sort of a subset of a bigger piece they do called The State of Retirement Income, and you can find that at Morningstar.com. Just look up The State of Retirement Income 2025. It's a really detailed paper.
Well, and I hope it's somewhere warm during the winter months. That's the state I want to be in. So
yeah, of course they're going to ask you for your email address and your, some information, but that's okay.
Is it a state with no income tax? Because I don't want to move to one where they have income tax there, because that would be expensive in retirement.
Yeah, don't know.
No, okay. All right, let's go to some questions from Knoxville, Tennessee. It's Sarah. She said, I'm all in on equity index funds and Avantis and dimensional passive type funds. Mm-hmm. But as I'm getting closer to retirement, I want to invest more in bonds. When I look at the standard bond index funds like BND and FXNAX and compare them to actively managed funds like VCRB and FBND, the actively managed funds, always look better. I can't bring myself to pull the trigger and buy BND or FSNAX when it seems like the actively managed funds have both have better returns and are less volatile. Am I doomed to financial failure or eternal haunting by the ghost of John Bogle if I choose to invest in actively managed bond funds?
What were her actively managed choices again?
VCRB. She said, P.S. My name isn't actually Sarah. I'm too shy to have you say my kind of unusual name on the air. Well, I lived with that my whole life, so I get that part. But
you kind of have. Look at
VCRB.
The expense ratio on VCRB.
How big? Well, I don't even know what that is.
For Vanguard, that's a lot. Vanguard Core Bond ETF. And that is a 10 basis point. Oh, I see why they yield more. Well, see, there's always a reason. There's always a logical reason. There's no magic formula that makes these things yield more money. What makes this one yield more than BND is the fact that it is more heavily weighted toward the lowest end of the investment grade bond spectrum, which is where the yields tend to be higher. 22% of this portfolio is triple B. As a matter of fact, about 25% of it is triple B or lower.
Which you would consider...
It's getting into the junkier category.
It's close.
It's not junk, but for example, BND, which has a lower return, which is just the total market, it has an expense ratio of 3/100ths of 1%. So that's a lot lower. and its triple B or lower ratio is 13%.
Yeah, and this is something that I think is a very good point of inflection. With your fixed income, you really shouldn't be sitting around trying to figure out how do I make more. What you should really be thinking about is how stable the assets will be. Because remember, what you really want it there for, especially, Sarah, as you're getting into retirement, is when stocks go down and you have to pull from your portfolio, you want a stable mass of money that you can pull from while stocks are down, so you can let them rebound while pulling money from the thing that hasn't moved around much. So for me, bonds are about the stability. They're about the core of that portfolio so that when stocks take a hit, yeah, and I know it's been a while, but it's coming, that you're all set. So again, it just gets back to the mindset around fixed income for my take.
Yeah, and the thing, we get caught up in what we're making, and that's what Tom is saying is absolutely true. We're not suggesting bonds for your portfolio for that heavy return. We don't even look at that number. What you want to look at is things like standard deviation. You want to look at that volatility. You also want to look at credit quality. Credit quality says almost everything you need to know about bonds. The higher the credit quality, the more likely they are to have, less volatility, but also no bonds defaulting. When a bond defaults, you may not be hurt by it, but the value of your portfolio will decline. And that's what we're trying to avoid. Bonds are about adding stability. And by the way, that Vanguard Core Bond Fund is really new. I mean, really new. When did this thing start?
I'd never heard of the ticker when we read the question.
Let's see. When did that thing start? I think it was 2025.
Wow. Okay.
No, 2024. Started
but still,
at the beginning of 2020 into 2023. So it's 2 years old.
Relatively new. So there's your answer. And again, we would be sticking with the index style there rather than trying to pick something that's going to make you a little bit more money. Larry writes us from Greenwood, Indiana. I have a $100 portfolio and desire a 70-30 ratio of stocks to bonds. That means 70% in stocks and 30% bonds.
Portfolio?
That's what it says. I imagine it's 100,000, but it says 100, so I'm just reading the question. Then he wants to know, should his foreign amount be 30 or 21? He said, but then he wrote back, said, I hit submit too soon. In the scenario of percentage, there should be 30% in bonds, right? Yeah. 21% in foreign stocks and 49% in U.S. stocks. That would be the 70. That's close enough, right? 50 to 21 ratio.
Me.
You're going to want to have more in those international stocks.
More in those internationals.
You're going to want to have 30 to 40%, 30 to 40%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yes.
So there's some debate
to better
there.
reflect their true value in the global economy. It's not
in the
just
economy,
market
not in
value.
The market value.
Right.
You're going to still have
I don't
65%
like using the
U.S.
Market capitalization figure. Really look at what they mean. When it comes to the global economy, it's pretty much half U.S., half the rest of the world. Generally speaking, over the past several years.
You're talking GDP now.
GDP, output.
Mm-hmm.
Not the stock markets, because the European stock market, the reason I think you should have more is because they haven't done as well. You know, if you had been doing this for 10 years, you would be about 40 to 50 international. You would have been rebalancing the whole time. If you started today, of course, the international is a lower percentage of the total world market. But again, 10 years ago, it was a much higher percentage. You know,
and as I pointed out at Retire Meet, love means diversification. Something's not working all the time, right? Some part of that portfolio, as you point out, Don, has not been working very well lately. That's large U.S. companies compared to international over the last year and a half. That was a big difference from the previous period where U.S. were killing it. So, so anywhere I would say between 35% in international, you could go down as low as 21. You're still getting the exposure, but he makes a good point. So, but there's a bit of a debate there. But yes, your percentages are pretty close. All right, here's an interesting question from Atlanta, Georgia, where Helen writes, Hi, Don and Tom. I have a fiduciary financial advisor who charges 1%.
Mm-hmm. Good.
The advisor made an error that cost me $3,500 in unnecessary taxes and penalties. I'd like your opinion on whether it's fair to ask them to subtract that amount from their fee. In early 2025, the advisor completed 2 backdoor Roths for me, one for 2024 and one for 2025. At the time, I had no other funds in traditional IRAs. In September 2025, the advisor rolled my traditional 403B, valued at about $500,000, from TIA into the IRA. Money was still in my IRA on December 31st, 2025, so the pro rata rule applied to both backdoor Roths. Due to this extra taxable income, I was charged penalties for underpayment, estimated federal and state taxes. I have an individual 401k, so if my advisor had rolled the funds into the 401k or waited until after December 31st, I wouldn't have been charged taxes or penalties. I never need the money in my traditional IRA to pay for keys, et cetera, et cetera. But the point of the matter is, if you're working with somebody and they cost you a tax penalty, then yes, I think that's not an unreasonable thing at all to ask them to pay for that. Sure.
I think that's absolutely reasonable, and you're just asking for a fee reduction. If they as a matter of fact, I was just looking at some of the rules online. Yeah, you're going to really have good luck with.
I think so.
Some legal documents here. One of the things that an advisor should compensate you for is failure to coordinate a Roth conversion properly.
Yeah. Bingo.
So
that should have been thought out carefully. That was a mistake.
If you took this advisor to arbitration, you would probably win.
And if you're going to stick with them, if you're still going to work with them, you tell them, here's what this cost me. Most advisors are going to say,
that's what
no
I would
problem.
say. I would say, okay, everybody makes mistakes. I get it.
Yep.
I'm not leaving you, but I want my fee reduced in the next year commensurately.
I think you're going to find most advisors are going to say, yeah, that was.
They'd be out of their mind to say no.
Yeah. They don't want to have the blemish of somebody chasing them around for that.
Oh, because I got to tell you, well, no, it's not. Yeah, if no fiduciary advisor wants to have, when you go to advisorinfo.sec.gov, it says right there, disclosures, yes or no.
You want to know.
You want to know.
Big no.
Because if it says a yes, then that means you did something wrong.
Yep.
Doesn't mean you necessarily acted illegally, but you did something or you were accused of doing something wrong and you didn't make it right. If they just make it right, then it's not going to go on there. So my guess is they're going to make it right.
Yeah, and so I think you should immediately ask. Sounds like you've well documented this.
Yep.
And your advisor
I'm surprised they didn't.
I'm surprised too, because generally when these things come up, the advisor will reach out and say, hey, look, we messed this up, and so we're going to reduce your fee by this amount in the next quarter. So it should be a pretty easy one. Those are the questions, my friend.
All the dead trees you have today?
All the dead trees. Got to save a few trees because the sun's coming back. We need them to block out that hot sun that's coming here sometime in the next 3 or 4 months. So.
See, what month is it? March?
I'm hoping for July. So.
Okay, 4 months. Yeah, you're good. 4 months.
I wasn't that far off. Yeah.
So. Okay.
Get the lake above 50 degrees again.
Why do I always have to come out when it's 50 degrees and raining?
I don't know. We just love having you here. You cheer us up in the dark, gloomy months of winter.
So raining.
Sorry.
I just did it, and it was
You
wet.
survived. You don't look any worse for wear.
It was wet.
I know. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for our little get-together we call a podcast. And remember, there are only about 1,800 others that you have to listen to. So got your work cut out for you. You'll find we're very consistent, though. If you listen back, you'll go, wait a minute, that's the same advice they're giving now. Yeah.
Same advice in 1998. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Pretty much the same all the way along because guess what? It really works. And if you want to ask us some questions, well, you can do the tree route, the dead tree route. That's Tom. He's the dead tree man. Or you can use the live voice route where you get turned into an AI robot. No, actually, you just get cleaned up and sound really good. And that is by going to talkingrealmoney.com, clicking the contact form, saying, I want to ask a question, and then either recording it on the microphone that comes with your computer or that.
And people do it, and they do it well. They do it well.
Yeah. And I need more of those. right now because I only have for my next show, I think I have 3. So.
And we're not doing who again. He who will not get mentioned on this program.
We're not mentioning bobbing for Bitcoins? I said bobbing for Bitcoins.
Okay. Close enough.
Bitcoin bobbit?
Stop it.
Just taunting you. Just taunting. All right. Thanks for being there. Take good care of yourselves and join us right here on this podcast service 5 days a week as we continue talking real money.
The opinions and views expressed on this podcast were current on the date recorded.
Opinions, estimates, forecasts, and statements of financial market trends that are based on current market conditions constitute our judgment and are subject to change without notice, including any forward-looking estimates or statements which are based on certain expectations and assumptions. Although information and opinions given have been obtained from or based on sources believed to be reliable, no warranty or representation is made as to their correctness, completeness, or accuracy. Information presented on the podcast is not personalized investment advice from Appella Wealth. The views and strategies described may not be suitable for everyone.
This podcast does not identify all the risks, direct or indirect, or other considerations which might be material to you when entering any financial transaction.
Past performance does not guarantee future results, and profitable results cannot be guaranteed. We hope you realize that the information provided on Talking Real Money is for informational, educational, and hopefully enjoyable purposes only. The podcast is not trying to get you to buy or sell any financial products or securities. Instead, the program is provided as a public service by Appella Wealth, a fee-only registered investment advisor.
Please see Appella Wealth's ADV Part 2A on our website for information regarding Appella's fees and services.
Appella Capital, LLC, DBA Appella Wealth, is an investment advisory firm registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission. The firm only transacts business in the states where it is properly registered or excluded or exempt from registration requirements. Registration with the SEC or any state securities authority does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Appella does not provide tax or legal advice, and nothing either stated or implied here should be inferred as providing such advice. Thanks for listening, and please visit TalkingRealMoney.com for more information and important disclosure related to performance of any specific index or fund quoted in this podcast. And the lawyers get richer.